Pilots, investigators, scientists, and researchers from 7 different countries gathered in Washington to discuss their shared experiences about UFOs. 14 people participated in this conference, including a former governor of Arizona, Fife Symington, who said he saw a UFO above southern Arizona in 1997. Other speakers included a retired Iranian Air Force general who said he tried to shoot down an extraterrestrial vehicle but says all his controls went haywire, to a retired Air France captain who says he and most of his passengers saw a huge flying disc. That's me right there asking a question. Perhaps I'm not one of the panel. Perhaps one of the most unusual stories, though, came from a U.S. Air Force security officer who, while on assignment at a base in England, was summoned to an aircraft that landed in the nearby forest.
During the evening of 29 November 1989, in a small area in eastern Belgium, approximately 140 UFO sightings were reported. Hundreds of people saw a majestic triangular craft with a span of approximately 120 feet, powerful beaming spotlights moving very slowly without making any significant noise, but in several cases accelerating to very high speeds.
Now, that's a retired Belgian general. I was telling you earlier about that former member of the U.S. Air Force in England. He said he saw a craft in the forest while they were looking at it. There was no doors or windows on it, but it looked like something they'd never seen before. And then all of a sudden, he claims it just took off and disappeared. And I asked him, I said, did you see any people? Did you see any beings? He said it was too small to have any people. I said, but if they came from a different world, they'd be maybe little tiny people. Anyway, he said he never saw any people. The thing took off, and he believes, he doesn't know what it was, but he says it was nothing that he's ever seen on the planet Earth before. Either way, the purpose of this conference, Nicole, was to try to convince skeptics this is a worthy field of study and to request that the FAA investigate such sightings. The FAA has told us before that it, quote, doesn't have the power to investigate either way until a sighting one day results in an aircraft landing and its inhabitants doing interviews with people like us, Nicole. There'll be a lot of doubt about these claims.
This is amazing. And you know what? I can't help but laugh about this because I'm so surprised that some of these high-ranking officials are coming out and becoming almost a new face for UFO enthusiasts out there, because when you think of people saying, oh, hey, I saw a UFO, you kind of think of freaks. I'm not going to lie. Were you surprised to see them there?
I think a lot of them admit it took a lot of courage to get there. I mean, a lot of them are afraid to talk. They think that people think they're freaks or crazy. I will tell you, though, Nicole, that the people we talked to today seem to genuinely believe they saw these things. And in many cases, they probably did see something. Maybe it wasn't from another world. And not everyone who was on this panel, Nicole, thought for sure it was from another world. They just can't explain it. And that seems to be the more typical explanation we hear from people, because we've done a lot of stories about these kinds of sightings over the years. And make no mistake about it, there are tens of thousands of sightings worldwide over the last few decades. But the very important point to bring out, while these people may have seen something unusual that you can't explain, the fact is, until that day comes when someone lands from a different world and goes on television and we see them, I mean, that will be an amazing story. I can't wait to cover it if it happens, but it hasn't happened as of yet.
Of course. You know, it was the goal to make believers of you and I, of course, but what else were they trying to do? Get more funding for research? I mean, what was the point of talking about all of this?
I think a lot of the genuine enthusiasts here are very insulted that the U.S. government has no body to investigate such sightings. Other countries do, and that's why some of the people on the panel are from these other countries today. For example, you had these Air France pilot, retired French military officials. They say France has a body that does investigations. The United Kingdom has a body that does investigations. You're supposed to report this stuff right away. But in the United States, there's nowhere really to report this. There was a sighting over O'Hare Airport in Chicago last year, and the FAA, that's when the FAA told us we don't investigate these kinds of things. And there were a lot of people at O'Hare who said they saw something hovering above the airport. No one's quite sure what it was, but they were kind of encouraged that, you know what, it was probably a weather phenomenon.
I'm Fife Symington. In 1997, during my second term as governor of Arizona, I saw something that defied logic and challenged my reality. I witnessed a massive delta-shaped craft that silently navigated over the Squaw Peak area in North Phoenix in the evening, and it was truly breathtaking. To my astonishment, it appeared to be a solid structure. It was huge. It had a very distinctive leading edge with huge embedded lights in it. And it was just traveling quietly, made no sound, through the Arizona night sky. I still don't know what it was. As a pilot and a former Air Force officer, I can definitively say that this craft did not resemble any man-made object that I'd ever seen. And it was certainly not high-altitude flares as put out by the Air Force at Luke Air Force Base, because I've never seen flares fly in formation. The incident was witnessed by hundreds, if not thousands, of people in Maricopa County and in southern Arizona. I was never happy with this silly explanation. There might very well have been military flares in the sky that evening, but that sure wasn't what I and what hundreds of my fellow citizens saw.
When the pilot first reported the UFO, he described it as a huge ball with lights running around it. He said it was about 4 times bigger than the 747 he was riding. And remember, the 747 has an elevator. And he's looking out the window and he sees something that's 4 times the size of his aircraft. He said he saw it with his eyes, his lying eyes, he saw it. The co-pilot with him saw it, and the other crew member all saw it visually.
Both objects were of a flattened disc shape with a dark area to the right. They were brilliant yellow with light emanating from within, and I estimated them to be up to possibly a mile across. I found myself astounded but curious, but at 12 miles distant these objects were becoming uncomfortably large, and I was glad to descend and land the aircraft.
During Air France flight 3532 from Nice to London on 28 January 1994, I observed with my crew a UFO in broad daylight near Paris. This UFO was in evolution and it looked like this, with a bank angle of 45 degrees. It seemed to be a huge flying disc. It stabilized and stopped moving.
In a small area in eastern Belgium, approximately 140 UFO sightings were reported. Hundreds of people saw a majestic triangular craft with a span of approximately 120 feet. Powerful beaming spotlights moving very slowly without making any significant noise, but in several cases accelerating to very high speeds.
The witnesses then observed a landed spherical 3 meters diameter UFO at a distance of 80 yards, with 4 occupants near it. Very high luminosity was reported after slow takeoff, leaving physiological effects on the witnesses' eyes that were confirmed by the village mayor. The hiss noise described by the 2 witnesses was also heard by the hunting guard of the village. The UFO acceleration after vertical takeoff was estimated to be about 100 Gs by Japan experts. The occupants were seen floating in the air while entering the craft from its top, at first in a hurry like this.